So this is actually interesting to note. This one's perfect. This one's great. This one's perfect too. I'm sorry, I mean to talk down on you. You're great. You're amazing. You are perfect. In this chapter today, we are making Semitas de Chocolate. They are a form of pan dulce or sweet bread, as it is called in Latin America. In Honduras, these sweetbreads are very, very common. Dunked in coffee, it's basically a nice buttery roll with a crispy, sugary coating on the outside. And that sugary coating is going to have cocoa powder in it to give us that nice hint of chocolate. Growing up, we used to eat semitas pretty much every day. I remember my dad coming home with a bag of them from the local bodega or the local Honduran market, and it was kind of like a ritual. 5 o'clock-ish, my mom would be waiting with her coffee, I would have my milk, and we would just tear them up. It was like we would just open the bag and they'd be gone like that. I am extremely excited to be able to share with you this very traditional pan dulce sweetbread so that you can make it in your home kitchen. It is very simple, only a few ingredients. Let's get into the bake. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to make my dough. So 550 grams of all-purpose flour. We have our flour in the bowl. I'm gonna add 100 grams of sugar, 100 grams of butter. It's at room temperature. We're actually going to add all of the butter in at once. We need 100 grams of water, 5 grams of kosher salt. And now we get to the fun stuff. We've got our leaven build. We've made this with our sourdough starter. All right, so 200 grams. There we go. We need 3 egg yolks in our dough. It's the last thing we're adding. And remember that using just the egg yolk is gonna add extra richness into our dough so that the inside is nice and tender. Usually when I separate egg yolks, I'll just kind of crack the white into a bowl and just toss the yolk into my fingertips, and that's it. Make sure you save your egg whites for your delicious cholesterol-free omelet tomorrow morning. All right, now the fun part, okay? What we're gonna do now is we are going to mix our dough, all right? So we've got butter, egg yolks, and our levain. Those are the items that are really gonna need to be worked into our dough. So I like to use kind of a squeezing method to start incorporating them. I like to keep one hand dry while I mix. That way I can kind of turn the bowl. I like to use this technique here where I just go around, turning the bowl, and then going around and then squeezing. You don't want any clumps of butter. Once I'm at the point where most of the dry flour is incorporated, I will start to use both hands. So as you can see, with more mixing, with more squeezing, all of that dry flour is starting to kind of get incorporated into our dough. And we hit it with that rapid fire, you know what I'm saying? Hit it with a quick, all right, just like that. I'm not squeezing through the dough. I'm not tearing into the dough. I'm not letting my fingers penetrate, because what's happening is we're having the beginnings of our gluten formation. So I don't really want to tear the dough. We've got good incorporation here, but we're not done. We're gonna get into something called kneading of our dough. I'm gonna get clean, dry hands, and I'll be right back here to start the kneading process. Typically when I knead, I'm going to use the tips of my fingers here to pull the top of the dough. When I say top, I mean the part furthest away from me. I'm gonna pull that into the middle. So I use my fingers to pull that into the middle, and then I'll put my fingers, I'll tuck them back here and use my palm to push it forward. And by pushing, I'm actually breaking my gluten strands a little bit. I'm not pulverizing them or destroying them, giving them a nice break. It's like when you go to the gym, you know, you kind of tear your muscle strands apart, but they form back together stronger. I'm gonna pull into the middle, and then I'm gonna push up. Other hand is gonna rotate for me very quickly, all right? So you're gonna see a movement here. I'm gonna do it a little bit fast for you, just so you can see the flow that you can get into while you knead, all right? So push. Other hand is just guiding the dough, and rotating, I don't want to knead the same spot over and over again. You know, if I knead the same spot over and over again, look, you can literally see it it'll rip way too much. Once you get to this phase here, your dough, it's smooth. It does not stick to you. It does not stick to your work surface. That means that gluten formation is developing and it needs some time to rest. So I'll kind of get that into a ball shape, and I want to kind of close this up. I'm gonna ferment it like this, so that bottom side will kind of seal itself up a little bit. And all I'm gonna do is put it into a bowl, a glass bowl, of course. And so that our dough doesn't stick to the bowl, we can use any type of oil. I'm going with coconut oil, literally just a bit. I'll rub it around like that. All right. So now that our dough is in our bowl, it's slightly oiled, we're going to cover it. After we cover our dough, we're going to let it ferment on our countertop for 4 hours. And this warmer fermentation is really gonna kind of kickstart our gluten development. But after that 4-hour period on the countertop, we will then pop it in the fridge for a nice 12-hour cold fermentation. Our sourdough starter works really, really well to develop flavor in that longer, colder environment because it slows the fermentation down and brings the flavor out in your dough. And then we want to bring it up to room temperature a little bit. So for about an hour, I let it sit on the countertop just so that it can kind of soften up and make our shaping process smooth. All right, so we're gonna power the scale on. We're gonna take our bowl. We need 100 grams of all-purpose flour. We are going to use 75 grams of coconut oil. That coconut oil is gonna add a nice crispness to this covering. We then need 50 grams of granulated sugar. Again, zeroing the scale out. So we are going to now add 10 grams of cocoa powder. All right, you don't want too much cocoa powder because it'll get a little bit too dry. Oh, I always feel so good when I measure things accurately on the first try. So as you can see here, we have a nice distribution of cocoa powder, sugar, some of the coconut oil, and the flour, all right? So I'm gonna begin by mixing this up. You can use your hands, you can use a spoon, you can use a fork. You just wanna incorporate everything evenly. I actually probably will cave in and use my hands. You know, I have no idea what this feels like right now, you know? It's just a spoon. So this is the consistency we're going for. Everything's incorporated. You don't see any dry flour. You don't see any bits of anything else. Sometimes coconut oil can get a little bit warm on you, so I'm just gonna pop this into the freezer. It's gonna be nice and firm and ready for us to shape. We're gonna analyze our dough to come up to room temperature. And so we're gonna look at the bottom here. This, again, why I like to use glass bowls. You know, we've got some very nice air pockets that have developed throughout this dough. And when you push into the dough, you can feel a nice soft bounce. Doesn't bounce all the way back up. It bounces kind of halfway there. Shows that it's fermented a little bit, hasn't broken down all the way, but it isn't just sitting there super strong without any kind of fermentation having happened. Because we've oiled our bowl, we can very simply remove our dough from the bowl. That smells really good. I'm gonna divide this into 5. I'm gonna eyeball it, see if they're equal, and then I'll weigh them to make sure they're all roughly the same weight. I'm looking for somewhere between 200 and 225 grams. So I've got 5 pieces here. This one feels a little heavy, so I'm just gonna kind of smash a little bit of it on the top. All right, there's no problem with that when you're resizing your shapes. It's totally okay to just take a little bit from one and just kind of smash it right on top because we're gonna end up shaping them. These 2 are good to go. This one's 230, he's a little heavy. This one's right at 200. All right, so what I'll do is I'll take a little piece there. 208, 220, 220. We're right in the ballpark range that we want to be, somewhere between 200 and 225. That's where you want to be, all right? So our dough is divided, And we want to work relatively quickly because we don't want the draft to start to affect these. The bottom, it's got a little bit of kind of like a layer because it was on the bottom of the bowl, it had the oil. So I want that to kind of get into the middle of the dough, and I want this part to remain the top of the dough. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pick one side as a top side here, and I'm going to fold just like that, all right? Almost like in a little cylinder. Then I'm gonna rotate it, and I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna fold just like that, all right? And that creates tension on both sides. Once I've got that tension, I'm going to push up with my palm, pull back with my fingers, and as you can see at the same time, I'm rotating it. So what you wanna avoid doing, which I see a lot of people sometimes do this, is you think that because you're making a ball, you just put your hand on top of it and you just kind of do like that. That's not necessarily what you want to do. What you want to do is build tension in your dough. You want the bottom to kind of seal up. You want air to go up. You want to start to see little bubbles in the dough. So pulling it back, using the palm, all right, until it smooths out. You don't want to overwork it either, just like that. And then you can, if the dough is a little bit bigger, you can use two hands. Again, creating tension on the bottom is what I want. And as you can see, a little bubbles here. All right, you can just see some of that air just getting trapped in there. So again, palm rotating with the fingers, nice and smooth. All right, so we're gonna put that one here. So again, I want this side to be the top. So we're gonna start upside down, because what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna kind of take the dough like this and then make that same kind of cylinder. Same technique here. So again, palm and fingers. See, the fingers are what's rotating. The palm is what's pushing the tension into the dough. All right, so palm and fingers. Once you see a nice air pocket like that, you should stop applying tension. You're just gonna risk tearing your dough. You do not want to tear your dough at this stage. We'll put one in the middle. I'm gonna do these fast, so see if you can keep up, all right? We're ready to start the proofing process, but before I get into that, we're going to actually top them with our cubierta. I want 5 coverings, so I'm gonna kind of just eyeball it. Again, it's not really necessary to weigh. And again, as you're using your hands, it will warm up a little bit. What we wanna do is kind of create some discs, just like that, all right? And we're gonna place that right on top of our dough. All right, so we'll take a little bit more here. We're just gonna separate it out there, make sure I have enough for each one. Form it into a nice little ball. All right. If it starts to get too warm, if it starts to get a little sticky, bowl of flour comes in handy there so that our covering does not stick to the hands. All right, just like that. All right, I like that one right there already. Look at that. Nice cracks there. That's the winner. Our semitas are going to proof for 3 hours. And when you're about 2.5 hours in, you can preheat your oven to 375. That'll allow your oven to get nice and hot. And right at the end of that proof time, we'll be able to pop our semitas into the oven. So I'm gonna leave them here at room temperature for 3 hours. It's been 3 hours. Our semitas are proofed up very nicely. I've got the oven on at 375, and it's time to take a look at what exactly we want to see in a perfectly proofed semita. We're looking again for this nice, slight bounce back. Very simple, very nice. These semitas are ready to go. Let's get them into the oven. We're gonna let them bake for 30 to 35 minutes. Depending on your oven, what you're looking for is a nice golden brown sheen to them. It's been about 30 minutes. Time to check on the semitas. Very nice. It's a beautiful bake, I can tell. A nice crackling covering here. All right, I can see a golden brown sheen on the actual dough itself. which is absolutely beautiful. All right, and a nice crisp bottom. All right, that's what I'm looking for. These are good to go, so I'm gonna take these out of the oven and we're gonna let them cool. As your bread is cooling, it's gonna continue to kind of cook on the inside. You don't wanna rip into them too fast. So we're gonna let these rest for 15 minutes, and then we're about to enjoy them with some coffee, because that's the only way to eat a semita. Oh yes, my friends, we have found you a nice home. I can smell the coconut, the chocolate. I can smell the tang of the sourdough starter. I can smell the butteriness of them. They're flaky. I can feel the flakiness. It's almost like a combination of pie dough with like a soft roll. All right, so I'm gonna break this semita open and it's going straight into the coffee. I've been waiting for this. Oh, look at that. Nice and warm. Nice and smooth on the inside. Nice and rich. It's time to test them out. You gotta get a nice dunk, by the way. Don't be shy. Seriously, this is amazing. I took a real bite. When your parents are immigrants and, you know, it's just kind of this small little tradition that you have, like as a kid, I'll never forget those days with my parents, seeing how hard they worked to come here. You know what I'm saying? That's what it is. It's all about family, it's all about community, and bringing these flavors of my culture to your dinner table. It's just something that's very, very special to me. I can't wait to see what you guys make when you're following this chapter, when you're watching this and making this semita dough. Semitas are the best. They're the best.